Hi, and I'm Russ. Welcome to Yum DM's video channel. Today I'm going to do a bit of a walkthrough of my latest zine as of recording, which is issue 46, April 2025. And this issue is on dark cults. Um, the Just to give you a bit some background on this issue, it was sort of it was one that I hadn't planned at all. It was one I think I heard a podcast or watched a video or something, and they mentioned dark cults, and I immediately went, "Oh, that would make a good issue." And so I sort of threw it in the mix between two sort of multi-issue series, which I have been sort of been doing lately. The ones that I'm working on now are a treasure trilogy. And the ones that came before were based on weird, so like weird places, weird magic, and weird monsters. So this one, I guess, is pretty weird anyway. So it sort of fitted in with the weird stuff, but it wasn't absolutely part of it. But yeah, it's a great issue. I had really f a fun time creating this issue. Starting with the cover. So the cover is the actual cultist there on stilts is an image by itself, and I actually created the background sort of and the background effect plus the blood splatter to sort of bring it all together. So it's a bit of a combination. I definitely didn't draw that picture because it's amazing, and I'll get to all the art um, credits and everything at the end. But yeah, it's a brilliant piece of art, and I'm really happy that it was made available that I could use it. But yeah, it's the first sort of cover that I've done more than just a touch up to, just creating a background. So I thought it looked pretty cool. Um, so this is the full issue. So if you've been to my website and just downloaded the free issue, um, and you've sort of looked through it, you'll notice that there's a few other articles. In this one, I think it's three more articles for this particular issue in the full version of it. Then the full version you can get for $2 as for the PDF if you become a patron. Otherwise, you can buy it from my website with a PDF or the print version and the PDF together, or you can just buy the PDF full version from drive-through RPG as well if you want to keep all your PDFs sort of on one spot. It's definitely cheaper on my website. So go to my website, then go to the store. It's just yumdm.com/store, I believe it is. And you can pick up the full PDF for I think 3.95. Or you can buy the print and PDF together, I think for about 8.95. Excuse me. So I want to sort of just go through it. There's what do we got? Seven articles, main sort of feature articles, and then we've got five sort of familiar ones. The familiars are sort of articles that I've probably over the last sort of half a dozen issues sort of kept the same. So there's one on character building, solo spotlight, spellcraft, adventure locations, and class acts, which has got to do with obviously classes and all that sort of stuff. So the feature articles, I'll just go through it, talk about it, give you some sort of behind the scenes, um, sort of I guess thoughts and how it sort of came together. If you're interested in that, keep watching. So the Dark Cults issue, like I said, came around just by me watching something and just getting a spray of information, sorry, inspiration. And I do want to thank my patrons. If you become a patron, you get your name in the issue as long as every issue, your name will be there as long as you keep, obviously, being a patron. So I really appreciate them and everyone who buys my issues as well. The what I wanted to do with this issue was when I thought about it was to not only give you something to create dark cults with, but also bringing them into your campaign. So the first couple of articles are really talking about just how to build memorable cults, as the article states. And then the next article is really about bringing them into your campaign and how to do that and just some ideas. So this is just a pretty much a list format type article where it gives you ways that you can really build memorable cults, um, and then sort of an example of each for each way to do that. So, define their core belief, and the example is, Doomsday Cult believes the world will end unless they appease a forgotten god. So you've really got to bring that core belief. What drives them is really that, you know, and what makes them different to other factions and other cults. Symbols and rites, like a great way to introduce cults is just to splatter their symbols, in a forgotten tome or a scroll, or maybe one of their cult priests or leaders uh, created a spell book or some new spells, or created a scroll and their symbol is on it. And then the PCs might look into that, they might not, but you can definitely use it as a precursor to bringing the cult themselves into the game. So symbols and rights is definitely especially symbols, I think. Try and make it as iconic as the cult. Excuse me. Um, Establish like the cult's goals. So what do they what do they want to achieve? What is their big end game for them? Uh, Also, and then to bring it down a notch, human frailty. I think it's sort of easy to get carried away with cults and talking about them as though they're the sort of the big bad of the game or whatever, and especially with the leader, which I'll sort of talk about later. But there's a real human cost and a real human side to it. Why did the cultists join? That, like, they're just not cultists to cut down, although that's fun. Um, but why did they join in the first place? Like, why are these guys so ardent in their belief? Um, and you can use a lot of real world stuff for that at the moment, um, to sort of bring inspiration and flavor to that, I think. Leaders are really important. I dedicate a whole article later on about creating the leader. And as well as them just, attacking PCs or doing the memorable sort of ritual, there's a lot of subtle and insidious stuff that goes on. Like, how do they get their funding? How do they recruit? Is it threats, or is it just fear or intimidation? There's and what are their plans as far as, yeah, they're doing the summoning, but what do they need to do that? Like, you can start weaving stuff into your campaigns way before the cults are even appear, as rumors or news, or stirrings, or maybe some the NPCs that the PCs already know have joined the cult or have heard of the cult or mentioned the cult. So you can start weaving this stuff in before you actually bring them in. Um, and also, while you're doing this, try and get the players to understand the worldview of the cult. Maybe not, want to join, but understand that their worldview is real to them. You know, so I think that ties in. For example, with the define their core beliefs example about a doomsday cult. Like, they're doing this because they actually think the world's going to end unless they appease this forgotten god. They actually believe that a god, a long lost god, is going to wake up and destroy the earth if they don't do this. So that's a powerful motivator. And if they fully invested and fully believe in this, then yeah, it's going to be something that they can impart onto the PCs to try and get them to understand that. Um, The next article is on corruption of the ordinary through cults and society. So this is the article I kind of wanted to write to help GMs to sort of bring it in to their campaign world. So they don't exist in a vacuum. cults are very much part of society. They're not a spoken part of society, and unless you're talking in whispered tones, uh, but they are very much like they're a social organization. They need to recruit. They need to get funding, and this article just sort of goes into that and talks about what resources they can get from the society around them. Both human capital and money or influence, and what influence they have on society. Do they recruit nobles so that they can have an influence on the government? Do they recruit mages so they have spell power? That sort of thing. Then I moved into sort of, I guess, more of the nuts and bolts. So moving away from the fluff. Now, if you've read any of my zines, sort of in the past year or two, I'm really big on kits. And what I've done is actually created um, a more streamlined version of the kits that appeared in second edition D&D. And they are, if you don't know what kits are, they're basically just ways that you can simply bolt onto your character to give them a bit of personality and background and flavor. And the way I use them is sort of the way that prestige classes were supposed to be used in third edition, as in to add flavor to the world. So what I've tried to do here is to, instead of just having a cultist, uh, giving them a quick kit that gives them a very, specific benefit and hindrance, and yeah, and just to give them a bit of flavor and feel. So, for example, and if you want to, sorry, if you want to check out what I did with kits, it's in the classes issue, which is number 32 of D12 Monthly. So check that one out. Um, I believe it's in the free version, so you can just get the free version and understand what I did with the kits. But don't quote me on that. Sorry. The So instead of just meeting a stock standard cultist, these are the initiates of the Whispering Shadows. So they gain a +2 on all saving throws versus fear-based magic, um, because of who they follow. And so it's not a huge bonus. It might not even come into play unless someone casts a fear spell on them. But uh, yeah, but it just adds a little bit of flavor to them. When with kits, there's always requirements they have to meet. This is pretty simple. They just need to be Codex alignment. Back on the old 3 tier, if you wanted to make it the 6 tier alignments for AD&D, just make them Codex evil, or whatever you feel appropriate. Um, then we've got the cultist zealot. So these sort of gain in power. So your initiate is your sort of your stock standard starting, they've come into the cult, but they're not powerful or in any sort of way. The zealot is sort of that next level where they just completely have this unwavering faith, and they get plus 1 to attack and damage rolls when fighting in a place of worship. So again, it might not even take place, but there's a bit of flavor there. Um, the realistic chanter. So this is one that dons the robes and does all the chants and the rituals and all that. And so he can do these small little chants that give some benefits. So -1 to hit in any fear-based saves. So this sort of like spells, but just these little small chants, which I thought was kind of a cool way to add magic, or add special abilities without necessarily being a magic user or a cleric or whatever. I might expand on that because I really like the idea of these small little chants. Um, the possessed oracle. So this is a cultist or who has allowed a dark entity to inhabit their body, and they give prophetic visions and just have disturbing powers. So their benefit is basically they receive these cryptic visions from their patron deity or their monster they worship or whatever. And then there's sort of the kits for cultists. And then what I did in the next article was I kind of did the opposite of that and gave some kits for uh, cult hunters. So those people who hunt cultists and cults and try and evil ones and try and stop them. So I've sort of based these on most of them on my gods or my deities in Athea, my home world. They can be just taken as is and put into yours, or they can you can just change the name, insert God's name here. So the first one is the Lightbringers. Lucinda is one of the major gods and god deity of fire, sun, and rebirth. So they have a Lightbringer Inquisitor and a Lightbringer Purifier. So again, just adds a little bit more. And these are ones that players could take. If the campaign's focused on chasing down a cult or you know, just take them because they're pretty flavorful. Um, and you've got Veil Breakers. So Banoff is the deity of knowledge and wisdom. And so they have veil breaker analysts who try and figure out special codes and language and piece together fragments of information to discover where the cults are and what they're doing. And then you have a shadow agent, it's sort of like a veil breaker shadow agent, sort of like a spy, basically. And then a veil breaker interrogator. So once they actually get the cult members in, then these guys interrogate them to get more information. The Unseen Guardians. So these are Venerites. So Venran is the deity of protection, and they have their own sort of people who fight cults and cultists, especially in areas where a particular cult is active. And so they've got Guardian Water. So this is dedicated to protecting individuals and location from cult influence. So they're sort of the front line of defense. And then you have the Guardian Whisperer. And these guys gather information. So they're basically information brokers and gatherers for the Venerite Church. Um, Again, a cool little piece of Conan-like artwork, which I thought was pretty cool. Um, so the next article is really about generating the cult. So what I tried to do with this one, I tried to keep it fairly simple. Um, and something that you could do maybe just before a game or even in the middle of a game. It might, if you say, "Oh, just take a toilet break, guys," and then you quickly roll up a cult if you need one. Excuse me. Um, but generally, this is sort of something that if you know that there's a cult or you wanted to create a cult and or just get some inspiration for it, like these aren't, this isn't written in stone. Um, you know, Even if this is just generates an idea, that's a win. So what I've looked at, I just did a bunch of D12 tables because I know how everyone loves the D12 and the D12 table. So I just did what did I do? Seven areas that kind of combine to create the cult, and I did a couple of examples at the end. So the first one is the cult name. So trying, the serpent's sickles or the children of shadows or something like that. So you just basically roll first part, second part, 2d12s, and then get the name. Symbols. So I've tried to add in symbols that I tried to keep this fairly broad. So instead of saying, "Oh, it's a sickle with blood dripping from it" or something, I've tried to basically say, a symbol of their patron deity, if applicable. So like an eye, a serpent, a claw, just to give examples. A symbol of a specific location, if that's relevant to the cult. The other ones I did were, cult motivation. So what is the like to fulfill a dark prophecy? What do they want to do? What's their main driver? Short-term goals, long-term goals. So when I did this, I kind of had that as just goals. And then I thought, well, most organizations and businesses today, if you want to take a modern example, kind of have those short-term goals and then their long-term goals. So I kind of thought, and that ties in sort of with the motivation. So to do this, so say if you roll a 10 and to achieve a personal enlightenment through suffering and sacrifice. So say you take that idea. So it's the cult's about like a personal development and awakening within themselves, but they do it through suffering. So there might be a lot of ritual scarring. There might be combats where getting wounded is actually preferable. It might be, for example, it might be a some sort of deity of war, or or some creature that inspires some devil or demon that inspires battle and war. And then you can add, so you can have a short-term goal, which might be, say, to transform themselves into powerful inhuman forms. So all of a sudden you've got, okay, they want to achieve personal enlightenment, um, to transform themselves into powerful inhuman forms. So maybe they want to take on the form of the demon or the devil or whatever you want to have, or the Cthulhu beast. And then a long-term goal might be gain control over vital resources or a strategic location. So again, that strategic location might work its way into the war. So maybe like a Warhammer type demon that's just all about war and conquering and strength through self empowerment and might. Um, you can see how that kind of links together to give you, they start off, their motivation is to build themselves in the form of their demon. And maybe in the short term, instead of having a sword to fight with, their arm becomes a blade, in the shape of like their demon has. So the demon might have blades as arms. So, that might be, and you do that through some sort of evil ritual, and then um, and then they're doing all this to basically take over a city state or an area of land or a nation or something like that they're fighting against. So the cult leader, like I said, it's very important for the cult because the cult leader is sort of the big face and is probably going to be the big bad that your characters face. So working on them, maybe not. I think working on them at the start is important because it sets the tone for the rest of the cult. But he might not, or he or she or it might not be seen by the party for many sessions or years or whatever. So so take the first thing I looked at was a fanatical zealot driven by blind faith. So he is like maybe a fighter or a warrior who's just fully accepted the fact that this demon will give him power, and he just totally believes in the faith of the demon and what message they're carrying. The other thing is methods. So this isn't, and I've sort of put an asterisk here, these are the main methods used. Others can be used as well. So if you wanted to, so maybe with this cult, if I rolled a nine, the use of propaganda and misinformation, it probably doesn't suit. So I might just pick one, or um, maybe spreading disease and plague works, open and aggressive recruitment. So maybe they start wars or battles to try and get new recruits, something like that. And then the rituals involved. So um, what rit again, these are sort of the main ritual that they have. So and so here we go, rituals that invoke the sacrifice of a living creature. So they might actually, if you want to work that into the combat one that we're kind of working on here, you could envision that the death of their enemies is a sacrifice of a living creature. So maybe they don't take prisoners unless they're recruiting them. So you could say if they attacked a village or whatever, they decimated the village, the survivors in the village will either have to join the cult or die. So it sort of brings into going back to that recruitment method as well. And it brings out some really cool ideas just by, you don't even have to roll. You can just look at the first one and play off that. So there's some example cults here, the Blackthorn Covenant and the Harbingers of Shadow. Just to give you an idea, breakdown of them. Um, The next one was the cult of personality. So I've done the same thing, but just on cult leaders. So I've gone through the cult's leaders' personal motivation, their strength, their weakness, which I think is important. Cults aren't infallible. So they have their own issues, and cult leaders have their own issues. So that could be a great way for characters to exploit the leader or the cult itself. And then you've just got like quirks, just add a bit of flavor to the leader, and make them a bit memorable. So, cult leader example. So I've taken the Harbinger of Shadows, which I mentioned here, and just created a leader based in them. So, Traum Shutton, which means Dream Shadow. And the leader is a doppelganger, so a shadow infused doppelganger. And a belief in their own divine right to rule, network of powerful and influential allies, the reliance on loyalty of specific but flawed lieutenant. So that could be a good one. That could be where he has everything right. Like he's been doing this for so long that he just has everything right. But he's got that one weakness, that one Achilles heel, where his lieutenant is either is really flawed in some way. Maybe he doesn't follow orders. Maybe he goes after the PCs without informing the leader. Maybe he, kills a whole lot of cultists when he didn't need to, like just again, throwing them against the PCs. Maybe he wants to get out of the cult. Maybe or maybe he's a spy for a particular thing and just can't get out for whatever reason until the PC shows up. And then uh, the quirk is he has an unsettling habit of staring intently at others. That's kind of very intimidating. So the next one is the Harbingers of Shadow. So I sort of played on that sort of shadow cult and sort of created a cult lair. So you could pretty much use this and just pull it straight out of the zine and put it into your campaign world. Um, so that's what I tried to do. So now you've got the cult itself that you can sort of tease and flesh out. You've got the cult leader again to tease and flesh out and to stat up if you want, and then you've got a layer ready to go. And so this layer is sort of a what was it again? Small merchant house. And then the basement, obviously, they're all cultists do their evil deeds is in the basement, has been expanded into like an area for the cultists. So this merchant house is sort of a facade. I mean, they still do business, and that's how they get some of their wealth funneled into the cult. But it's also a facade just so that they can exist in the city without any raising any suspicions. And then I've just got what each room is used for, really just allowing the DM to flesh it out as they want, but giving them something to go on. And then so that's the last of the main sort of feature articles. Then we go into the familiar articles. So character building, I try and this one sort of just I try and bring in stuff that characters can use or that develop character within the PCs or just something like that. And this one is the Dark Tongue. So this is something that I kind of thought of during creating this. It wasn't an idea straight off. Um, when I was writing my notes, I sort of just it sort of came out of the miasma of the stuff that I was doing already. But I really like the idea, and I probably want to expand on this as well. So what it is a secret language, um, but a secret language on forbidden knowledge. So some books, some tomes, some scrolls, some carvings, whatever you want, are written in this dark tongue. And what the dark tongue does is it empowers and augments the rituals if they're spoken in this dark tongue. So it gives more power to what the cultists are already doing. Um, and so there's a few ideas about the origin of it, the nature of the language, and some of the powers that Dark Tongue has. So like binding, commanding. So whether they're summoning demons or whatever, if you do it in the Dark Tongue, it's going to be a stronger or better summoning. And you can use these to augment spells or rituals or whatever. to make them more powerful. And some secrets are unlockable except for the in the Dark Tongue. And the curses and rituals and hexes, ritual augmentation, as I mentioned. So learning the Dark Tongue is a bit of a double-edged sword. Well, it is a double-edged sword because while you anyone can learn it in theory, it leads you to a very dark place. And people have gone insane or just turned evil because they've learned this dark tongue and suddenly understood secrets that were um, yeah that were were not meant to be known by mortals. Um, and then I've given you a few ways to use it in the campaign. It's a tool of corruption. It's some of that use of if players want to learn it. Um, and then also not just cultists, but you can expand the dark tongue or just use the dark tongue in different ways. So, corrupted creatures. So if you have corruption in your world, that creates these sort of spawn or, evil versions or dire versions of creatures, then they might speak and understand the dark tongue. Sentient undead might speak it. Aberrations like things like the aboleth, um, mind flayers, all those sort of weird creatures might understand and use the dark tongue. Ancient dragons might use it, especially the evil ones, and even magic items. If it could be a good way for a PC to learn. So say if they get a +4 defender or something, but it speaks the dark tongue, it's going to start slowly leak that into and teach that to the PCs whether they like it or not. And that could cause its own issues. So there's a few ways you can use it other than just for cultists. It could be a real, especially if you introduce it, it could be a real play in the new campaign. So the next one is solo spotlight. So in my solo games, sometimes if something comes up, like say if the random encounter table says a bunch of cultists, turn up in the dungeon or whatever, they might be searching for something or whatever, and there's a conflict between the PCs, or even just a meeting between the two. I sometimes I sort of stop the game and go through this whole shebang with the cultists and everything, all this sort of stuff and work it out. But if I'm in a sort of a hurry or I don't want to do that, this was a sort of a quick way that I could build the cultist, the few D6 rolls, and then after the game or whatever, if I need to, I can expand on this using the other tables. So, for example, this gives you the cultists are, um, who they are, what are they wearing, what do they want, and um, what will they do when they meet the PC. So, just fight to the death no matter what, flee or retreat because they're actually on another mission, try and recruit, that sort of thing. So this is just a really quick generator for those times when you're playing solo or even at the table and you just want a really quick, encounter for the PCs. Um, the spellcraft one is cult rituals. So I tried to add a few different rituals for the cults. So the binding of shadow, so it summons a shadowy servant, or binds an evil outsider through the cult service. So these are sort of rituals are kind of, I guess, ways that the cult can use magic to do something that's not maybe not covered or just something that's a bit more flavorful, and you might be able to get some ideas. And you can use these not just as powers that the cultists use, but as plot hooks or challenges or rewards even. So for your players. So and this one is just a safe house. So if a cult exists in a city like the Thieves Guild, they're going to have safe houses where they can go. So this is just a couple of ideas, a few ideas around, where the cultists might be found. So, and you could use these as partly rumors, like say, there's an abandoned warehouse down near the docks. But maybe people have seen some activity, even though it's supposed to be abandoned. So the PCs might go there and suss it out, or it might be a way to introduce the cult to them. Maybe there's a thief PC who wants to go to a warehouse to steal something or whatever, and then they find out that there's actually cultists there and not what they actually thought. Um, and then the last one was just a example, I guess, of one of the kits that I mentioned before. So this is a Lightbringer purifier, Sister Alaria, the Lightbringer. So she's a cleric of Lucinda, level 5 cleric, and I've added on the kit. So she's former healer turned divine warrior. She's got wears plate mail, has a big whopping mace or warhammer. And her special ability from the kit is enhanced turning. So she's at 5th level, but she turns evil outsiders and undead as a 7th level cleric. So um and yeah, just has equipment. So you just a quick PC that you can use or not use or whatever at your discretion. And then just obviously the last page just goes into talking about want some more web enhancements. I haven't done one for this particular zine, but there's others available there for other issues. If you want to check them out, they just add to their zine and follow along. But I want to do some more of those. Um, so the image acknowledgements, Fat Goldwyn Games did the cover. Like I said, I added the background and everything. The images inside the zine was Dean Spencer, who is an amazing guy. Check him out on Patreon. Dago Castro, who does a lot on Drive-Through RPG. I get quite a few images from him, and just a friend of mine, Darren, who did some images for me. So, and the map of the cultist lair was by Dyson Maps. I'm sure you've heard of him. Next month, so if you're watching this, I'm recording this on the 8th of May. So if you're watching this, there is no issue for this month. Uh, there is no issue that will get released for this month. However, because I just had some other stuff to do. However, in June, there'll be two issues released, one for May, which should have come out already, and then one for June. And then July will have its own one. And they'll be a trio of issues, all based around treasure and loot. So this next one is just called Treasure and Loot. And it looks at, different things like actually I moved cursed items. I know it says cursed items there, but I moved that to the next issue. So just, different treasure guardians, treasure tables. I really struggle. One thing in the solo game that I do, I find it hard to find really good treasure tables. So I want to try and bring that into this issue. The next one is magical treasure, and then the third one in the trilogy will be is I've sort of named uh, what was the name? Beyond all that glistens. So sort of treasure that's beyond just coins and gems and stuff that we sort of know and love. So there'll be I'm trying to make that issue to really stretch what the term treasure means, and to really understand that, give GMs ideas about how to give treasure, inverted commas, to players that isn't just gold and gems and jewelry and all that usual stuff. So that'll cover normal treasure, magic treasure, and then the sort of stuff beyond that. Just to give you a quick example, like information, like knowledge is a great treasure that you could give PCs that it might be worth more than a coffer of gold, especially to them. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm going to try and do one of these for every issue moving forward, and I might try and do some back issues as well. But yeah, I just wanted to give you a bit of behind the scenes and ways that you can use this issue in your own game, in your own campaigns, and I hope you really enjoyed it. So this is Russ from YumDM signing off. Thank you for listening.